Hi, time for some pyro talk. I want to talk a little bit about pyro's unlockable primaries, the flamethrowers. I know I did speak a little bit about, well, not a little bit, I spoke at length already about stock and general flame changes in part 1. However, there was a section of that video where I drew a false conclusion from the fact that you can now extinguish pyros without the degreaser, and I assumed that this was because they had extended the average flame hitbox lifetime duration, but apparently this is not the case. I got it wrong, I'm sorry. Or if they have changed it, it's to a negligible degree that I couldn't measure upon further testing. So apologies for that. And the true reason it's now possible to extinguish pyros without the degreaser is what seems to be a combination of 3 primary factors. First of all, weapon switch speed was increased in the Tough Break update. Essentially, your weapons come out faster, and this completely slipped my mind at the time of recording part 1, I forgot. The second reason, and I did touch on this before, is that a single flame hitbox can now interact with an enemy multiple times in its lifetime. In the past, a pyro would only be ignited once on first contact with a flame hitbox, meaning if contact was made too early, the pyro wouldn't be on fire at the time of the axe hit, even if the hitbox was still making contact at that time. This necessitated a number of specific strategies and movement tricks, such as bending flames around or having a pyro walk into receding flames in order to have the flames make contact as late as possible. But this is no longer necessary. They can make contact as early as you like, as long as they are still making contact at the time of the axe hit. And the third reason, pyros seem to stay on fire for longer after receiving fire damage now. I remember before the patches, the only way it was possible to land a crit flare or detonator against a pyro, without using the degreaser that is, was to curve the flames around so they make contact as late as possible, and during that time switch to flare gun, close in point blank before firing. And the timing was very strict, I remember. If the flames made contact too early or the flare was shot from too far away, it would never crit. But now, it's much more forgiving, even after considering the weapon switch and damage changes. So much so that you can take almost the opposite action of what was necessary before, and it will still crit most of the time. So these are, from my observations at least, the main reasons it's now easier to crit pyros. Okay, now with that out of the way, we can start talking about this thing, Speedy Speed Boy. The degreaser has changed quite a bit since its previous incarnation. Probably most notably the switch speed attribute was changed from the all-round 65% increase to only being faster to and from the degreaser. That is 30% faster from the degreaser, 60% faster to the degreaser. However, switching, for example, from secondary to melee is only as fast as the default switch speed of 0.5. Personally, I don't like this change very much, mostly because it makes certain combos much more difficult or flat out impossible in some cases. Specifically coming to mind is igniting a pyro with the volcano fragment and then critting them with a flare gun using that ignition, which is mechanically impossible now, which is a shame because that's probably the only reason I would ever use this piece of shit weapon, the volcano fragment. So that's just one example of reducing diversity of playstyle, giving people less unique things to do within the game. This problem is further amplified, in my opinion, by the flame damage changes on the degreaser. Direct flame damage now does the same as stock and others, and afterburn now only does 1 damage per tick. And I imagine this was changed to encourage finishing enemies off with a combo rather than afterburn. However, in my experience, and also considering afterburn damage has been mostly irrelevant for about 8 years, it mostly just encourages flaming them until they're dead. The only other downside the degreaser has is a plus 25% ammo cost per air blast, which doesn't force you to be more careful with your air blasting so much as it does force you to hog ammo boxes wherever you go. The degreaser, as it stands now, is basically just a better version of stock. It does everything stock does, but you also switch weapons faster. The downsides almost never come into play or change the way that you would play in any meaningful way. The degreaser is definitely very strong in its current state, but I feel like it has lost part of what made it unique before, and there are barely any combos left in the game that can only be done with the degreaser and not the other flamethrowers, although it does make them a lot easier in general. So first thing I would change, revert the weapon switching back to what it was. Let me switch quickly from secondary to melee and back. Next thing, lower the direct flame damage. It should do about half of stock flame damage. Or why would you ever risk trying to combo someone when you could just flame them? Besides trying to look cool, of course. And the last thing I would change is shorten afterburn duration. Now I did say afterburn damage was mostly irrelevant, but afterburn duration is what allows you to get crit flares and axes. So I think theoretically shortening the afterburn duration would encourage people to actually use the increased weapon switch speed rather than just flaming. In fact, the degreaser already has a slightly shorter minimum afterburn duration compared to stock as a hidden attribute. I think it's about 1 second, but you know, that's nothing. I'm talking about changing it to 3 seconds maximum duration. I really want to be forced to do quick, precise combos. That about sums up my opinions on the degreaser right now. It's really good, maybe a bit too good. I wish it was a bit more unique, a bit more combo oriented, and I wish it wasn't stealing the job of the stock flamethrower so much. Which brings me to another point of discussion. I get this question all the time. Why have I been using stock flamethrower over the degreaser? Allow me to preface this answer by saying that the primary reason I play this game is to go for clips to use in videos. I'm not so concerned about winning or getting a lot of kills as I am about getting unique kills that push the game to its mechanical or aesthetic limits. With this in mind, do you think it would be more impressive given the opportunity to airshot someone to hit them with a stock rocket or a direct hit rocket? The stock rockets move much slower than the direct hits, allowing much less room for error. You have to predict further ahead in time. This also allows the enemy more time to airstrafe and evade your airshot attempts. In most situations, it's much easier to airshot somebody using the faster direct hit projectiles. Now ask yourself this, is it more impressive to extinguish a pyro with the degreaser or with the stock? The slower switch speed of the stock not only requires you to predict further ahead and switch weapons earlier, but the time frame you are given to connect the axe before afterburn resistance takes effect is much smaller. What this means is the timing and maneuvering required to land the crit is more precise and may even warrant some deliberate flame manipulation in order to make it more consistent or even possible at all in some cases, much like you would with the old flame behavior. So to put it simply, it's generally more difficult to perform combos without the degreaser, and therefore more special, more exciting in my opinion. And there are specific combos or scenarios that would only be possible by using the degreaser, but if you aren't doing those things, then you aren't hitting that flex ceiling. You see, every skill ceiling is accompanied by a flex ceiling that defines the extent that you can style on somebody, and I am constantly striving to style as hard as possible for my videos, no matter how badly I might fail in between successful attempts. The degreaser actually has a higher skill ceiling and flex ceiling compared to the other flamethrowers, so I'd like to start from the bottom, milk the stock for all its potential, before moving on to more advanced ideas with the degreaser. The other reason is I like to use the stock as a limiter, so that when I actually use the degreaser seriously, it feels like a huge weight has been lifted off my back.